Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Andrekson. Some of you know me as the rapper Stress. I'm 43 years old and I've been dealing with depression for the most of my adult life, but working on it since 5 years. I will take you through my process of getting out of it in the hope that it will help others. Like it or not, mental health is clearly one of the challenges of our times, but unfortunately, people dealing with it are still being stigmatized, and too many affected by it are still refusing to get the help that they need. Maybe it's because their trust in themselves is low, their environment has no understanding for it, or maybe because they just prefer not to acknowledge it in the fear of being judged or stamped for crazy, weak, or lazy. It took me a while to understand that if I wanted to get out of it, I needed to get comfortable with the comfortable and the unknown. A little bit like writing this talk. But before I continue, I would like to say that this is my interpretation of my condition. And I'm not an expert, so don't shoot me if I don't tick all your boxes. I grew up during the Cold War in a communist Estonia, living the average Soviet life. Think of a shortage, food, clothes, heat. We had it. I was raised by my mother, along my sister. She was raising us alone because my father was too violent to be around us. I guess when a state treats its subjects as dogs, all they know is how to bite. On the mental level, when you go through your life and your struggles, it's just life. You know nothing else, and you don't realize the marks it leaves on your psyche. But we can drag our past for a while. There always comes a point where our backpack is full. I met my therapist 10 years ago, and I was dragged there actually by my ex-wife because we were having some troubles. And my therapist told me, "You seem to have your demons all packed and neatly organized on the shelf. So if you don't want to open all these boxes right now, I cannot force you." And of course I didn't. But 5 years later, I was back on her couch in pieces. I had to accept that I needed help. As a male, you have this idea that the society expects from you to be strong and thriving, and asking for the help is a sign of weakness or even could question our manhood. On one side, having this male pressure is one thing, but on the other side, there's the stigma that the problems in our head are not real. We should just get over them. We rarely get a sense of understanding from others, which can be super frustrating. And I know that many of us have seen this discomfort in somebody's eyes when you tell them, "Hey, I just went to therapy." And this is part of the problem, because I'm not weak, I'm not crazy. I have just moments where I'm overwhelmed with my life. And these moments, these weak moments, don't define me. So the first challenge in therapy for me was to be brutally honest with myself and look at the things for what they really are. I know it sounds cliche, but the truth is that with the time you tend to build a narrative for yourself that helps you to make a sense of all this mess. And nobody likes to get naked in front of a stranger, but having access to a neutral person is key, because our friends and family, they are not equipped to help us. And more importantly, most of the times they are part of the problem. Only then I could start unknotting my story, understanding my triggers. I had to accept that all the negative experiences that I went through were still embodied in every cell of my body. It helped me to realize that I was not a monster, that I reacted like one sometimes, yes, because it was the only way that I knew how to survive. So I needed to find a way to this monster, even if it scared me. And with the time, I realized that this monster was just a little scared boy. And instead of thanking him, I was judging him, forgetting that it was his behavior that helped me to survive through all these years. In itself, it's like a double punishment. You have to deal with the shit that life throws at you, and then you are blamed for defending yourself. So I started to talk to him. I started to visualize him, explaining him that we do not anymore have to survive, that now we can live. In itself, it's great news, but the problem is the problem of trust, and it goes hand in hand with fear. It is scary to deactivate all our defense mechanisms because we have been used to it for so long, and I had to come to a realization that I was constantly tense, constantly stressed, constantly alert. People ask me, they always ask me, why do you wear sneakers? And I tell them, yeah, because I couldn't have cool kicks when I was growing up, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, these are the only shoes that are the right shoes if I suddenly have to run. Therapy gave me access to understanding these trigger points. It made me realize that I was overreacting in everyday situations that were totally manageable for others. It made me feel ashamed, alienated, and I was often perceived as an asshole. For example, I used to always freak out in traffic jams, literally destroying the steering wheel, being overly aggressive with others to the point where my girlfriend didn't want to let me drive anymore. Talking about it with my therapist, she explained me that I was so often put in a powerless position where harm was done to me that it was just the body defending itself. This simple explanation was a relief. It gave me the tools to act and not simply react. I could monitor these feelings, and more importantly, I wasn't anymore fighting an invisible enemy. To conclude this therapy part, I would just like to say that having access to self-understanding is key. There is no shame in what life has done to us. It's just life. But we also have to accept that sometimes we cannot make it on our own. We need help. And once you get that help, you actually have to get to work. Our past experiences are not the only things shaping our mental health. We are living in a world driven by information and performance, under the constant pressure to have, to say, to look good, to be unique, to outperform others to the point where we forget why we are doing what we are doing. I mean, it just gives me anxiety saying this sentence. In my opinion, the root of this anxiety comes from the fact that we have to process more than we can compute. There's a law called the Moore's Law that says that we are linear beings living in an exponential world. For hundreds of years, the human brain has been existing in a local environment. Everything we did was a day walk away. The life of our great-great-grandfathers was quite similar to the life of their great-grandsons. Nowadays, a week's worth of information in a Tagesanzeiger is more information than an average person from the 19th century will ever encounter. And the problem is that the volume is only growing. We didn't get our brains rewired. We didn't get an update. We are still interpreting a global world with a system built for local landscapes. We somehow managed to build a system that we cannot keep up with. Technology and entertainment have created for us a comfortable bed where to lie and consume mindlessly. In a world where the narrative is that nothing is impossible, you can be anything you want. The next logical question is to say, am I enough? Because from everything I see, from movies to ads, I constantly get reminded that I could do better, I could be better. And it's not like a pep talk from your big brother who wants the best from you. It's more like a dagger constantly hanging above our heads. We often choose to chase what we could be instead of building with what we are. We compromise our core values to be accepted and loved, botch our bodies in order to fit a certain standard of desirability. The dissatisfaction isn't necessarily with ourselves. It's more with how we are perceived. But we cannot build mental health if we don't stand for who we are. The other dangerous aspect of this narrative is that it overlooks the fact that we are not born equal. You and me were not dealt the same cards. I have to run my own race. We all have our individual challenges. But if I keep looking left and right and comparing myself to others, I'm standing still. These endless possibilities lead to anxiety and often to a feeling of depression. Bluntly said, mass, leisure, mass culture, the consummation of mass media, are parasites of the mind that consume our psychic energy without giving us anything back. Mass media isn't designed to make you happy. Mass media is here to make money for somebody else. The result on our mental health is that we are constantly stressed, constantly absorbing meaningless information, constantly comparing, instead of asking ourselves, how do I create value that is purposeful and enriching for myself? The word purpose is central here, because I believe that happiness comes from purpose. It's by being totally involved in what you do that you can achieve it. It's by being curious, by seeing life as a playground, not seeing every situation as a win or lose, but more as the opportunity to grow, and accepting that there is a certain unknown, even if it's super uncomfortable. In January, I found myself in Sumba, one of the most remote islands from Indonesia. I just had come off tour. I was having a hard time in my work and my personal life. I was in therapy since quite a while, and I was getting out of the woods, but I was not there yet. I was like missing to crack the last kilometer. So I was really looking for a reboot. In my life, I've been good, I've been great, but for the majority of the time, I've been just average. And there's nothing more frustrating than knowing what you can do or can be, but not being able to having access to your full potential. My surf teacher recommended me a book about peak performance, where they talked about the state of mind that is called the flow, developed by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. They define this state as being so involved in an activity that nothing else matters. The ego fades away, time flies, every movement, action, thought inevitably follows from the previous one. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skills at the utmost. When I read that, I was like, okay, this somehow sounds familiar to me. And because I had experienced this in my best live performances, in my best writing sessions, in my best recording sessions, but to me it was just like, yeah, great, we had something great, okay, next one. I didn't know that there was like a name for it, and even that there was a way to access it. So I dug a little bit deeper, and it deconstructed the process of accessing to the best version of yourself with play and passion. Finally, the inner child in myself could tell my adult self, see, you actually need me to access to the best version of yourself. I don't want to get into specifics now because it would take us too much time, but you really should check out the TED Talk from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Back in Switzerland, I started to apply it in my work and in my everyday life. What it meant is that before I was doing anything, I was visualizing it. And when I was doing it, I was going slow in order to go faster. Before, I used to need like 100, 200 takes to record a song. Now I was doing it in 20. The difference was that I was taking more time between the takes. I was visualizing what I was doing. I was focusing on slowing down my heartbeat, and I was just trying to trust myself. My friends, like my co-workers, they were like, okay, who are you? What happened to you in Indonesia? And because the results were just not faster, they were just better. Now, you could say, what does mental health have to do with flow? Well, the state of the flow is actually at the opposite of the state of our world, where we are constantly expected to interact, constantly interrupted by random notifications that throw our focus off, which we all know is bad for our mental. But more importantly, what does it mean to be depressed, to struggle with your mental health? For me, it really meant a lack of happiness. So how could I have more access to happiness? Through the experience of flow, if I wanted to be in flow, I needed to be there. I needed to be focused. And what I was doing needed to be a meaningful experience. A meaningful experience, let's take the example of an athlete. He has prepared for this race. He runs the race, best time ever. It's a milestone in his life. But during the race, his lungs are burning, his muscles are hurting, he's out of breath, but he achieved something that he could never do before. And he took control over his own life by being totally invested in it. The best moments of our lives do not come from passive, relaxing moments. The best moments usually occur when the person's body and mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to achieve something difficult and worthwhile. In my opinion, these are the building blocks of happiness. Aiming for challenge, aiming for purpose, instead of running on the treadmill of expectations. Today I can say that I'm running my race. This process gave me the strength to trust myself, and wherever I'm heading, I know that it will be the right thing for me because I've been running purposefully. Thank you.